Hello, everyone. Mark Roszewski here from Moving Worlds. I'm joined with Erin Dowd, who just got back from a 2.5-month Experteering trip in India with the Vanavil Trust. I'm really excited to ask her a few questions and hear her story as we get into here. So, Erin, without further ado, thank you so much for taking time to chat with us. Really excited to hear a little bit more about the work you did and share some of those lessons with some of our aspiring experteers here. So tell us a little bit more about you. What were you doing before you decided to go experteering?
Okay, well, basically for the past 2 years, I was doing all sorts of random things. I had decided to leave teaching after being in the profession for 10 years, and that I needed something drastically different, totally new. So what I decided to do is to become a travel writer, and that was great for a little while, but didn't quite fit in with what my passion was. So then I started freelance work for an education company, and that was fine, and the money was good, but it still wasn't quite what I wanted to do. So then I came across Moving Worlds and saw that I could combine my love of travel and my love of education, put it together, go somewhere for an extended period of time, and maybe possibly along the way figure out what I wanted to do next.
And so tell me a little bit more about that. It seemed like you were kind of using this maybe as not just a way to kind of give back and have a more immersive experience, but to do next. Tell me a little bit more about, what else were you thinking about?
I was open to the idea of something big, something new, and going to India was one of the craziest things I could think of to do, particularly in a place where they don't have much tourism. You don't see people vacationing. I was out in the middle of nowhere, living in a village, and so I figured if I could plop myself there and do the things that I love, traveling and teaching, and some other things along the way, then maybe I would start to find my feet in the next step. So I have some ideas brewing. I've been writing some curriculum, actually. That's one of the things that I'm working on now with Vanavil Trust, helping them write a full-blown English curriculum.
Wow.
It's a huge undertaking. It's a huge project, but I'm excited that I'll be able to help them and then also maybe kickstart my own consulting business in the future.
Yeah, very cool. So then tell us a little bit more about, Vanavil Trust. Like what was the project originally scoped to do, and what did you end up doing while you were there?
Yeah, so originally I think the post said something like volunteer English teacher. And I hesitated a little bit because I got out of teaching for a reason, and I have taught English before, and it's not my favorite thing to do. But I decided to look into it a little bit further, and I found out that they had a lot of needs beyond just teaching English. And so they were in the process of starting up a new computer lab, and they needed teachers to get trained, and they needed just a lot of help with the curriculum. And so I was able to kind of design what I thought would be the best way to help them after talking to them and spending some time with them. And now I'm able to extend that help even further, which I'm really happy about because I just absolutely loved it there. So yeah, it was many things. It started out as a very small, just English teaching, and then turned into basically wherever they needed assistance, I was able to kind of step in and help out.
Cool. And there's a lesson in there. I kind of want to flag that for anybody, listening into this talk, is that all the programs that you ended up working on were things that they had originally initiated, right? So they had kind of come forward to say, hey, look, we're starting this computer lab. We're taking an initiative to develop some curriculum. And then you had the opportunity to kind of go and learn there and go through a pretty thorough planning process, right, that we kind of worked through. And then through that, you got to help them kind of support some of those initiatives. And I know, as we've kind of heard some positive feedback from both sides of the match, that that's something that, I don't know if you've heard this before, but that you did really, really well, and I think it's really best practice that we try and instill in our expertise. So cool. So how about, in kind of addition to the work that you were doing, what was kind of the most, I hate to use the word best part, but what was kind of the most interesting part or best, put simply, part of the Experteering trip? What really stood out for you?
Yeah, and that's easy. The people from Matt, who is one of the members of the board, he was sort of my contact person beforehand. And so he basically welcomed me into his family, and I met his in-laws and his wife and his, all sorts of people from the second that I got there. Super welcoming. And then when I got down to the school, the kids were fantastic. The staff was fantastic. I felt like part of the community immediately, which is something that was really important for me to have happen while I was there. And it was just every single person I met, it's hard to describe because it was that wonderful. Wow. And I think the people make the place. And so when you can establish good relationships and when you can get to know the people that you spend every day with, then that's going to make the work come a lot more easily. And that's exactly what happened. Great.
Cool. Yeah, no, I love that. The people make the place. I think that's very well said. So, okay, so let's go back in time a little bit, right? When you started working with Moving Worlds, you got to meet the organization. There's an online training. There's this planning guide. But, even despite that, there's always things you wish you knew before you actually went there, right? Maybe it's cultural. Maybe it's food related. Who knows? For you, what was one thing that you wish you knew before you actually, hopped on the plane over to India?
I had a really hard time with this question because I was thinking like, okay, well, there has to be something that, I got there and I was like, oh my gosh, I can't believe this. And I'm sure there were things like that, but they were easily overcome, whatever they happened to be. I think the biggest thing for me though was that I didn't realize I would fall in love with India as much as I did, and then really wish I had stayed longer. When I was leaving, it was so hard to leave, and I wish that the 2.5 months was 4.5 months, and that, I felt like I was just getting started with the program. And so, that's one reason why I'm really thrilled that I can continue to work with them, but I do wish I was still there.
Still there. Oh, I hear it. Yeah. Well, if you go back, take me with you. I'd love to go back as well. So, other than maybe stay longer, right? What other advice would you give people if you kind of think back to yourself, 3 months ago, right, when you were taking off? What advice would you give people who are just considering going on an Experteering trip?
Couple things. So with Experteering itself, at least for me, when I was going into it, I was thinking, okay, there's all these things I want to do. I have so many goals for this program. I made long lists and I bullet pointed things and I did all this research, and I was so excited to talk to Matt, one of the board of directors, and he kind of laughed and said, this is really great, but this is, just relax a little bit and, take your time, and you can't do everything, basically. And I thought, no, that's crazy. I can get everything done. I can do it. And I got there, and I quickly realized, no, I can't do it. But making those big goals helped me to make the smaller goals and to see what small progress can lead to big progress. And so make the big goals, but be realistic, I think, would be the biggest Experteering advice. But as far as India advice, if anybody's going to India, and I think this applies to most countries that you visit, India is amazing, but you have to go into with the mentality of everything you know to be true about life is going to be flipped upside down, and you have to be okay with it. Because if you fight it, you're going to get knocked down and crushed and just be miserable. But if you're okay with it, then your trip will be amazing. And the other thing that I think goes with just life in general is find beauty in the small things. Because if you're constantly worried about how much work you're getting done, or, all the problems that surround you all the time, because inevitably this sort of work is, surrounds you with problems every day. But if you find the little things and you find those quiet moments, it creates a beauty that wasn't necessarily in front of you before. So that's my advice.
Cool. I love that. So quotable. This is fantastic. There's one point in there that I kind of want to exaggerate. It's in one of our training talks, and I believe that the talk is called Inspiring a Life of Immersion, and Jacqueline Novogratz is the speaker, and she talks about having both this like audacity to kind of reach for the stars, but then this humility to kind of be back, of the people and of the earth of which you're a part of. And I think just kind of hearing you talk, right, it really kind of reminds me of that, of, shoot big, be audacious, but at the same time, like, be very humble and really take time to observe and along the way, like, find beauty in those challenges. And I think that's a really beautiful thing to share, and I'm really excited for other members to hear that. So then I have to ask, and the kind of last question, even though I don't think it was on the list of questions, but I would ask, is it sounds so exciting. What's next for you? It seems like you've had this really cool experience. You've been in a bit of a career transition yourself. Has this experience helped you, and where does Erin go from here?
Yeah, I think it's definitely helped me realize what I don't want to do and possibly what I do want to do. I have solidified the fact that I no longer want to be a classroom teacher, and I had been hanging on to that for quite some time. And as much as I love teaching and I love to be in the classroom, it's not a full-time thing for me anymore. What I also realized is that I want to continue work with schools like Vanavil and be able to help put the right people in schools and helping the schools, and also be able to do things like train teachers and write curriculum. So I don't know exactly what's going to come from that, whether it's going to be finding a company that does the things that I want to do, or whether it's going to be starting my own. But I think exciting things are ahead for sure.
Cool. No, I love to hear that. I think, again, it's really kind of an exemplary story of, you go and you give what you're good at, but you kind of use that as like this kind of growth experience. And it seems like you've really done that well on so many fronts. So, and I know, again, hearing from Vanavil Trust that, the work you've done is not only made an impact, but obviously the fact that you're virtually supporting them now as well and creating this long-term relationship is continuing to add value. So, on behalf of them and behalf of us, it's really been incredible to follow your story, and thank you so much for the incredible impact you've created along the way. And we just look forward to staying in touch and following along and hearing about the great work that you do. So thank you so much for your time and sharing your insight.
Great. Thank you so much. It's a pleasure.